Because I occasionally mention Russia's attack on Finland during World War II, I thought it would make sense to dedicate an entire section here to give a broader picture of what happened during those years. Between 1922 and 1991, the Russian Empire was called the Soviet Union, but I will refer to the country as Russia throughout the video to make it absolutely clear who we are talking about. Let's start with the political situation before things exploded in 1939. In 1917, a year before World War I ended, the Russian Revolution broke out. During that turmoil, Finland declared its independence after 100 years under Russian occupation. The following year, 1918, World War I came to an end, with both Russia and Germany losing their status as major powers. The same year, the Baltic states also regained their independence, and Finland was plunged into a civil war. Russia backed the Reds, the leftist side, while Germany supported the conservative Whites. The Whites ultimately prevailed. During the 20 years between the two world wars, the interwar period, both Germany and Russia were drawing up plans to restore their former empires, while simultaneously building up their militaries. At the time, Finnish society was highly polarized. On one side were right-wing radicals, on the other, communists supported by Russia. Finland had long maintained a positive relationship with Germany, which shifted to strong criticism following Hitler's moves against Austria and Czechoslovakia. In the 1930s, Finland joined the Nordic cooperation movement. Initially, doubts were raised about Finland's membership given its past ties with Germany, the status of Swedish language in Finland, and concerns about whether Finland truly upheld democratic principles. But cooperation gradually improved, and in 1938, the Nordic countries agreed on a joint policy of neutrality and non-alignment. Talks were also held about forming a military alliance, but no concrete agreement was reached. It later turned out that formal declarations of neutrality and non-alignment alone offered no real protection against the ambitions of expansionist powers. Hitler and Stalin made a deal. They divided Europe between them, with the Baltic states and Finland falling into Russia's sphere of interest. Hitler wanted to invade Russia together with Poland, but Poland said no. Stalin wanted to invade Germany together with Poland, but Poland also said no to that. In September 1939, World War II began, with Germany and Russia jointly invading Poland. Finland's neutrality, of course, meant nothing. The Russian Foreign Minister had told the other Nordic countries, quote, to stick to their beloved neutrality and not interfere with what happens between Finland and Russia. In mid-November 1939, Russian newspapers launched a media campaign against Finland, and on November 30th, Russia attacked. That evening, Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov went on the radio to announce that the Red Army had been tasked with securing Russia's external security. The invasion had been planned as an easy campaign. Russian troops had even brought along military bands, parade uniforms, and pre-written victory speeches. Much of this echoes what happened when Russia attacked Ukraine in 2022. Russia's attack on Finland led to its expulsion from the League of Nations, and member states were encouraged to offer aid to Finland. In the Winter War, Russia had a total force of 1 million men, 3,000 tanks, and 3,800 aircraft. Finland, in contrast, had 340,000 troops, only 32 tanks, and 114 aircraft. But at first, Russia struggled badly. The Finnish forces put up fierce resistance, and Russian losses were 5 times higher than those of the Finns. Russia temporarily halted operations, reconsidered its strategy, and in February 1940 launched a major offensive in the south that Finland struggled to withstand. On some fronts, the Russians had between 50 and 100 artillery pieces per kilometer. Finland's total use of artillery ammunition during the entire war matched what Russia fired in just 2 days. Finland's repeated requests for help from Sweden were rejected. Sweden wanted to stay out of the war, and the iron ore shipments to Germany were too important to risk. Britain and France offered to send 50,000 soldiers and weapons to Finland by March. This allowed both Germany and Russia, and they both wanted Finland to accept Russia's peace proposal. Russia, because they didn't want to end up at war with Britain and France. Germany, because they didn't want disturbances in Swedish iron ore shipments. Although British and French forces were ready to deploy, Finland finally never requested their assistance, seeing the proposed 50,000 men as too little too late, and because neither Norway nor Sweden allowed foreign troops to transit through their territory. On March 12, Finland signed a peace treaty with Russia, losing 12% of its territory. Although no nation came to Finland's defense, over 11,000 volunteers from 28 countries, mainly Sweden and Norway, fought on Finland's side. From Sweden came 9,500 volunteers, and from Norway 700. The Swedish Volunteer Corps, with 8,260 men, was responsible for northern Finland's air defense with Flight Regiment 19, and ground troops held the line in Salla in Finnish Lapland. Sweden was not officially involved in the war with troops on Finland's side, but didn't hinder and even facilitated those who volunteered. The Swedish government had set a limit of 8,000 men as an acceptable number of volunteers. Whereas Finnish politics during the interwar period had been characterized by deep right-left divisions, the Winter War unified the nation around a centrist position in foreign policy and defense. At this time, Finland was surrounded by the German military to the west after Germany invaded Denmark and Norway, and by Russia to the east and south after Russia invaded the Baltic countries. There were fears that Finland would become a battlefield between the two armies unless Finland chose to side with the Germans. At that time, Sweden allowed German troops and supplies to pass through its territory. Finland allowed German forces to use its territory both for transit and as a base for refueling airplanes after attacks against Russia. But Finland was always careful to emphasize that it was not a party to the war itself. Even when Russia shelled Finnish positions following Germany's June 22nd invasion of Russia, Finland initially held back. But after Russia bombed Helsinki and several other cities by 500 aircraft 3 days later, Finland felt that it had no choice but to declare war, and launched ground attacks together with Germany. In this second war against Russia, Finland quickly recaptured the territory it had lost in the Winter War and more. By December 1941, Finland's advances had reached far beyond its pre-1939 borders. The front lines then stabilized for 2.5 years and until June 1944, when Russia launched a major offensive leading to a peace agreement on September 4th. The peace agreement required Finland to sever ties with Germany and expel German troops from its territory. When this didn't happen quickly enough, Finland was forced to take military action against retreating German forces, who in turn carried out a scorched earth campaign in Lapland, destroying much of the region's infrastructure. Besides moving the border back to where it had been after the Winter War, Finland also lost the Petsamo region in the far north between Norway and Russia. Russia, Despite having helped start World War II by invading Poland alongside Germany, and despite attacking Finland and occupying the Baltics, was welcomed among the Allied victors at the war's end, keeping all the territories it had seized and expanding its influence across Eastern Europe. Instead of being held to account alongside the Nazis, where it rightfully belonged, Russia was embraced by the international community, and it has been spreading its toxic influence ever since. As of October 2025, Russia is escalating its military buildup with fresh reinforcements along the borders of Finland and the Baltic countries.
It's just Russophobia. We are not preparing for war. We come in peace.
During the continuation war, Russia used radio-detonated mines. To counter this, the Finnish radio station began broadcasting on the same frequencies to jam these signals. One song, Säkkijärven Polka, was deemed especially suitable for the task and was played over 1,500 times from September 1941 to February 1942 to disrupt Russian operations. In the 1960s, it was voted Finland's Song of the Century. Though often associated with Finland's Karelia region, the melody actually originated with a visiting German brass band in Säkkijärvi in Karelia, and the first recording of it was made by Finnish-American musician Willy Larsen in New York in 1928. It is also featured in the soundtrack of Girls in Panzer, Das Finale 4. There is a Finnish folk polka called Karjalan Poikia, Boys from Karelia, performed under many different names and with different lyrics over the years. After the Winter War, Reino Palmroth wrote a new, fiercely anti-Russian set of lyrics to it, renaming the song Silmien väliin, Between the Eyes. The lyrics were controversial even back when it was recorded for the first time in 1942, and is still considered somewhat inappropriate today. Karjalan Kunnailla is an old Finnish folk melody that the children in this picture in Karelia sang in 1942. There is a link to a more recent recording at the top right, but it can also be found in the video description. I suggest you play it in the background for the final images.